It's my honor and my privilege to introduce someone who is going to give Justice Stevens the BGA Excellence Award this year. She is a prominent and distinguished jurist in her own right, Judge Ann Williams, who sits on the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals here in Chicago. Judge Williams has a remarkable career, but she says that she likes to be known, she doesn't let her robes get in the way of her humanity, and I don't think a judge could say anything more relevant about the way she views life. Judge Williams has been a tireless proponent and mentor for people having access to the law and the bench, primarily women and people of color. She has worked tirelessly on behalf of that in this country and in many other countries around the world. This year, she received the highest award that can be given to a federal judge, the Devitt Award for Excellence. She was reportedly on the short list for the Supreme Court vacancy created by the retirement of Justice Stevens. And I would imagine that when there is another vacancy, she will be on that list too, and that may be the one in which she is at the top of the list. Today, we're pleased to have her with us here in Chicago to introduce Justice Stevens and present him with our BGA Award for Excellence. Judge Williams, thanks for joining us.
Can you put the mic? Good afternoon. Good afternoon. And thank you, Andy, for that very kind introduction. When he called me and told me he wanted me to introduce Justice John Paul Stevens, Chicago's own extraordinary justice, an icon in the American judiciary, the product of University of Chicago Lab Schools, University of Chicago, Northwestern Law School, Supreme Court clerk, general and block partner, outstanding antitrust lawyer, and Seventh Circuit judge, I was honored and humbled. And I said yes. Yes, because it was a better government association. Yes, because of the theme, all rise to the challenge. And yes, because this great American, John Paul Stevens, as a Supreme Court justice, has played such a vital role in our system of justice, at the core of the American democracy, and what makes our democracy real for all of our people, and why our system of justice stands as a beacon of hope and independence in our complex and demanding international world. He has indeed risen to every challenge, every step of the way. And after saying yes, I was flooded with the memories of Justice Stevens. I first met him when I was clerking on the Seventh Circuit. He was best friends with my judge, Judge Robert Sprecher. Our chambers were right next door. Justice Stevens was always so gracious and kind to me, and I felt kind of special until I found out he was like that with everyone. The people that cleaned the building up to the judges. You see, he and his friend Phil Tone were up for the Supreme Court that year, and they had promised each other that if either of them heard from the White House, they would tell each other first, immediately. And when President Ford called Justice Stevens, he asked him not to tell anyone because he didn't want it leaked. Justice Stevens said, well, Mr. President, I have an understanding with Judge Tone. The president said, I think he'll understand if you just tell him I asked you not to say anything about it. Justice Stevens honored his request, except he did tell his mother. Later that day, the White House called again and said that since the announcement was going to be made public, he could tell Judge Tone, and he made good on his promise. A man of his word and kindness, our Justice John Paul Stevens. A few days later, he came to our chambers and asked Judge Sprecher if he could ask our secretary, Nellie Pitts, who happened to be black, to come to Washington to serve as his lead secretary. Now, at the time, only Justice Marshall had an African-American secretary. Nellie said yes and moved to Washington and served with him for 30 years. A man of fairness, recognizing equality and excellence. That's our John Paul Stevens. Final story. In his early days on the Supreme Court, there were very few women law clerks. At the annual reception where the new clerks meet the justices, held in the justices' private dining room, one of the justices saw a woman clerk, pointed her to the coffee service and said, and I quote, "How nice that you're here. You can take the coffee around," end quote. What a choice she had. Serve the justice or offend the justice. A short time later, Justice Stevens arrived, saw her serving the coffee, and realized what had happened. He said to her, "Thank you for taking your turn with the coffee. I think it's my turn now." And Justice Stevens took the coffee pot and began serving the clerks. A man of wisdom, a quick study, a champion of equality, our Justice Stevens. So I thank you, Justice Stevens, for being who you are and being an inspiration to me my entire life, and an inspiration to our entire nation, and setting the standard for all of us to follow. And for your faithful service at 90 years old and 35 years on the court, the third longest serving justice, still playing bridge, golfing, swimming, playing tennis several times a week, our Justice Stevens has a competitive streak. He is an avid Cubs fan, and in fact, at age 85, he was asked to throw out the first pitch at a Cubs game. Before the Cubs game, he said, and I quote, "I used to be able to throw a ball pretty well, but when I first picked up the ball to throw it, it got about halfway to the plate. So I realized I had to practice a little. And I pretended on that day that I was out in left field trying to get a guy out at the home plate. And I threw it in that manner, and it worked fine." End quote. We want to be like you when we grow up, Justice Stevens. I end my introduction with a few quotes of our John Paul Stevens. "Work hard and remember the importance of making sure people know your work and your word is good. The most important asset a lawyer has is having other people willing to trust him or her. It is confidence in the men and women who administer the judicial system that is the true backbone of the rule of law." And finally, when asked about his judicial legacy, this humble, quiet, brilliant man said, "I just hope they say that he did the best that he could." You inspire us, Justice Stevens, to give our best, to do the best that we can, and for that we will always be grateful. We hope each of us as individuals and collectively will rise to the challenge, the way you have risen to the challenge your whole life. And you were presented earlier with this Cubs manager jacket, and so we hope you rise to that challenge too and get us a winning Cubs championship team.